Tonight, many of America's farmers already feeling the pinch are worried about the possibility of more challenges.
And we're going to lose another generation of farmers.
It began as a murmur on the docks, a whispered talk between grain inspectors in Southeast Asia. Then the reports became undeniable. A major wheat shipment from the United States was refused at the port, citing quality concerns. Within days, more shipments were redirected, contracts were canceled behind closed doors, and the American futures market was spooked. What the media portrayed as a minor logistical issue has turned into something considerably more dangerous: the systematic rejection of American grain on a global scale. For decades, U.S. wheat has been a global staple, synonymous with quality, consistency, and reliability. It nourished nations, boosted rural economies, and supported trade partnerships. But that image is disintegrating, and fast. Longtime partners in Egypt, Indonesia, and Bangladesh are quietly departing. They don't want to, but they have to. Delays, higher prices, and persisting contamination concerns have put American wheat at risk. And in today's unpredictable food security situation, no one can afford to take risks. Instead, customers are flocking north into Canada's welcoming arms. Containers formerly intended for Kansas are now unloading in Vancouver. Farmers in Saskatchewan and Alberta are receiving urgent calls that were previously directed to the Midwest. Meanwhile, the American silos are filling full, contracts are drying up, and Washington, silent. This is not just an agricultural blunder. It is a seismic shift. And if the United States does not change course quickly, it risks losing more than simply buyers. It risks losing the basic cornerstone of its global food supremacy. The unraveling did not occur overnight. It was death by 1,000 cuts. And now, foreign purchasers are saying what no one in Washington has dared to admit: U.S. wheat is no longer worth the hassle. It began with pollution. Several recent shipments tested positive for mycotoxins, a hazardous fungus that thrives in high moisture conditions. This was a red line for Asian and European authorities, particularly those in countries with rigorous food safety rules. Next came the shipping delays. A series of rail delays in the Midwest clashed with labor strikes on the West Coast. Wheat was expected to arrive in 3 weeks, but took 6 or more. Late deliveries are not only annoying for governments striving to stabilize food supplies, they are also harmful. The next consideration was the cost. With fertilizer prices still skyrocketing, fuel prices volatile, and a strong U.S. dollar making exports more expensive, American wheat became one of the most expensive options on the global market. Finally, consider reputation. In business, perception is power. What about the perception now? That American grain is unpredictable, over-regulated at home but under-tested overseas, and increasingly mired in bureaucratic snafus. When food ministers and importers asked, "Can we afford another delay?" the answer was plain. They walked, not because the product is bad, but because the risk is too great. They did not walk alone. They walked directly to Canada. While American exporters struggled to manage the upheaval, Canada was already answering the phone, and more importantly, delivering. From Saskatchewan's windswept prairies to Prince Rupert's export terminals, Canada moved as if it had been silently preparing for this time. And maybe it did. Farmers in Alberta reported unexpected contacts from overseas grain buyers, who generally signed contracts with American exporters. Suddenly, Canada's grain terminals became inundated with diverted contracts. What started as contingency planning swiftly turned into full-scale supply reallocation. And Canada was prepared. Transport Canada accelerated rail schedule. Grain grading and inspection authorities extended hours and computerized procedures. Export facilities increased throughput via overtime and temporary staffing. There are no press releases. There's no drama, just execution. But what's the true advantage? Trust. For years, Canadian wheat has had a quiet reputation for quality: lower contamination levels, stricter pesticide regulation, and a more efficient distribution system. With a favorable exchange rate and a trade-savvy federal government, it's no surprise that buyers began choosing Canada not just as a backup, but as the new baseline. It wasn't about flair, it was about dependability. Canada did not steal the attention. The United States dropped it, and Canada grabbed it without blinking. With fresh contracts coming in, global grain buyers aren't looking back. And Canada, they aren't just winning, they're creating a new standard. A different type of storm is brewing in America's heartland. from Kansas's golden fields to Nebraska and North Dakota's grain elevators. Not the weather, but hopelessness. With international purchasers pulling out, wheat producers in the United States are now sitting on silos that are nearly full. Grain that should have been halfway across the globe is now caught in limbo, losing value by the day. Some co-ops are rejecting deliveries outright due to a shortage of space. Others are providing pennies on the dollar for crops that previously supported entire counties. The futures market, already nervous due to macroeconomic shocks, has become gloomy. Wheat prices in the United States have plummeted, despite increased demand in Canada and Australia. The contrast is severe and intimate. Farmers who have followed all regulations, paid all growing costs, and fulfilled every commitment now feel abandoned. One wheat grower near Wichita stated bluntly, "We did everything correctly, and now we're paying the price for judgments made in Washington." Finger-pointing is already starting. Some criticize the Biden administration for neglecting deteriorating trade circumstances and failing infrastructure. Others point to the lack of a national strategy for protecting agricultural exports from labor disputes, port delays, and negative worldwide perceptions. But blaming doesn't help balance sheets. Loans still need to be paid. Fuel still costs money. Contracts, once canceled, do not suddenly return. What was intended to be a stable season has turned into a survival test, and many people are unprepared for the test. The global trading landscape is rapidly altering. What appeared to be a reliable American-led grain supply network has fractured into a new, multipolar marketplace. And in this new global order, the United States is no longer at the center. Major wheat importers, Egypt, Indonesia, and Bangladesh, have begun to restructure their purchasing patterns. Canada is now the leading provider. However, they are not the only ones climbing the ladder. Argentina, Australia, and Russia are rapidly boosting their market share by providing shorter shipping times, better financing, and fewer regulatory problems. China has seized the opportunity immediately. After years of tense negotiations with the United States, Beijing has reached new agricultural purchase agreements with Brazil and Canada. And India. They are indicating aspirations to increase regional grain domination by delivering low-cost exports to neighboring Asian countries. This isn't just trade realignment, it's economic diplomacy via food. Global customers who exclude the United States avoid not only logistical risk, but also political risk. In their opinion, American agriculture has become overly volatile, too pricey, too entangled in domestic strife. A new map is forming, one in which grain movements do not automatically transit via American ports. The globe is becoming increasingly diverse, and the United States, formerly the world's food guarantor, is now regarded as simply one supplier among many, and increasingly not the first option. If America fails to move quickly to restore confidence, it will lose more than simply shipments. It will lose importance. As American farmers lose contracts and global purchasers discreetly depart, one thing is lacking from the discussion: national media coverage. Despite the mounting economic catastrophe in the country's agricultural heartland, most major media outlets have stayed remarkably mute. No headlines. There are no primetime debates. There is no roundtable discussion on the repercussions of a worldwide buyer exodus. And the silence is deafening. While the Wall Street Journal mentions a price decline in passing, and a few trade periodicals report Canadian spikes, there has been no meaningful attempt to connect the dots. There is no investigative emphasis on why American farmers are falling behind, while Canada's progress is generally unquestioned. Why? According to insiders, the issue does not rate. Others believe it's overly technical. However, for the millions of people who rely on grain for survival, whether as farmers or consumers, this is not a niche. It has a national scope. Meanwhile, Canada is doing the reverse. Its trade agencies are issuing press releases. Agricultural associations are enjoying record sales. What about the Canadian media? They see this moment as a confirmation of years of planning and sound strategy. What was the result? A growing perceptual gap. Canada is now regarded as the responsible supplier, the reliable partner, next-generation grain leader. In comparison, the United States appears perplexed, divided, and frighteningly silent. Without a media reckoning, there is no political pressure. Without pressure, there is no change. And without change, there is no coming back. For years, the United States was the world's agricultural anchor. a dependable provider, a standard bearer, and a nation that fed not only itself, but entire continents. American wheat was more than just a crop. It was a currency, power, diplomacy. However, that prestige is slipping through its fingers. The global market does not care about legacy. It cares about logistics, reliability, timing, trust. Currently, the United States is failing the test. Delays in shipping, inspections that raise questions, infrastructure bottlenecks, silent leadership. Meanwhile, Canada is rising. Not with bluster, but with purpose. They meet deadlines, satisfy customers, and communicate confidence. In a world when food hunger is on the rise and supply networks are weak, it is the only money that matters. American farmers are not to blame. They've done everything correctly. However, they are the ones suffering as the system around them crumbles. From government inaction, to outmoded trade infrastructure, to a media ecosystem that has kept their misery hidden. The message from global customers is now clear. We do not want promises. We want the product. In this new era of agricultural diplomacy, there is only one rule: whomever delivers wins. And unless the United States implements strong reforms, modernized inspection, restored international confidence, and expedited trade pipelines, it will lose more than simply weak contracts. It will lose the geopolitical influence that accompanied them. Because once confidence is destroyed in global trade, the one item that cannot be shipped back is loyalty.